after we're done with our hopefully relatively brief statements. So good morning, my name is Becky Dennison and I'm with the Los Angeles Community Action Network, or better known as LA CAN. LA CAN works to promote and defend human rights in downtown and South Los Angeles, and we are here this morning to announce our lawsuit against the City of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Police Department, and the Central City East Association because of their coordinated efforts to silence LA CAN, prevent us from exercising our First Amendment rights, and their malicious acts that resulted in the wrongful prosecution of one of LA CAN's longest-term organizers, Deborah Burton. This lawsuit is a result of years of unfair and unjust targeting of LA CAN, staff and members by LAPD. A long history of retaliation against us for fiercely and loudly opposing LAPD's racist Safer Cities initiative in the Skid Row community, and more recently their efforts to even more blatantly favor the downtown business community's positions by stifling our right to protest and manufacturing charges against our staff. LA CAN has opposed gentrification in downtown LA since its beginnings in the 1990s. We are opposed to the forceful push-out of low-income people of color, and we have for many years promoted an alternative vision for downtown that includes affordable housing, local hiring, and other equity principles. And much to the disappointment of the business community, we've secured many victories that secure our right to remain in this community. But despite these victories, LAPD still chose to enact the Safer Cities initiative in 2006 as another tool of gentrification. It was designed to make the environment so hostile for homeless residents that they would simply move elsewhere. We opposed this broken window style of policing from the start and quickly learned that it was not just homeless folks that would be targeted, and Safer Cities would never address serious crime in our community. Instead, mass arrests were made, mass citations were issued, almost all to low-income and homeless residents, almost all of whom were people of color, and most of whom were African American. And we refused to simply sit by and watch our community be devastated by the criminalization of the most basic everyday activities, like resting on the sidewalk. We would not sit silent while oppressive drug war policies were applied at a scale never seen before, and while the use of force, unconstitutional practices, and other LAPD abuses ran rampant in Skid Row. We are driven by the legacy of other social movements, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words ring true still today. We who engage in nonviolent direct action are not the creators of tension. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. We were met with hostility by LAPD right from the start. For years we have dealt with LAPD's intimidation tactics and violations of our First Amendment rights, often with support from the city attorney and other city officials. Most of our staff and core members have been arrested or threatened with arrest for engaging in perfectly legal police monitoring and public protest. We have lost members of our organization because of fear of arrest or other retaliation by LAPD. And in 2011, these efforts escalated even further, and they began to collaborate with Estela Lopez and others at the Central City East Association to expedite their attempts to silence us. LA CAN members and other community partners began legal protests of the business community's public safety walks because they were a tool to promote gentrification and other interests of big business and developers. And throughout every monthly protest, we were continually threatened with arrest, met with dozens of officers on the scene, and in one case, one of us was wrongfully arrested. And it was Lieutenant Shannon Paulson, then the head of LAPD's Safer Cities initiative, who worked overtime to crack down against our First Amendment protected activities. Emails and videos over several months show her incessant communication with Estela Lopez and others at the CCEA about their common goal to stop our protests. One evening prior to a regularly scheduled protest, she videotaped her roll call, and she even handed out photos of myself and many of us here, saying that we had already committed crimes and they should prepare for arrests. After various tactics to stop the legal protests failed, Lieutenant Paulson finally succeeded in ensuring criminal charges were filed against Deborah Burton. The supposed crime? Blowing a toy air horn. And when did it happen? More than a year prior to the charges being filed. For months, Lieutenant Paulson and Estela Lopez worked to create a falsified and unsubstantiated report that Deborah actually willingly and intentionally blew this horn into Ms. Lopez's ear to cause damage. Although there was no evidence to support this claim, Deborah was caught up in the criminal justice system for almost a year before a jury found her not guilty on all charges last summer. Deborah is a 62-year-old woman. She's a mother, a grandmother, a friend, and a colleague. She has faced numerous hardships and challenges throughout her life and has worked alongside of us for the last 10 years to improve her community of Skid Row, to ensure that low-income and homeless residents are protected and treated fairly. Yet because she and all of us at LA Can are brave enough to speak out against LAPD's policies and against the moneyed interests of downtown, Deborah was framed as a criminal. But she isn't. She's an organizer. We all are, and we plan to continue to unashamedly challenge those with money and power who use those things to marginalize, displace, and brutalize those with low and no income. But Deborah's case is just one extreme example of the city and LAPD's efforts to squash dissent and silence LA Can. All of us continue to face the same patterns and practices year after year, just in different forms. And as we learned with the public safety walks and the documents in Deborah's case, what happens behind the scenes we often don't know until it's too late. Since Deborah's case, we've had another staff member arrested. We've had members and staff targeted for citations while they're engaged in the exact same activities as other people on the same streets. We continue to see extra officers pour into City Hall when we're there just to give public testimony or otherwise publicly participate. We continue to have multiple officers respond or try to move us out of public space when we are simply observing or documenting LAPD practices. Recently, LAPD officers tried to forcefully move me off the sidewalk while I was observing them trying to arrest people for sitting on the sidewalk, but they were sitting in their own wheelchairs in the middle of the day. That's the kind of oppressive practices that they don't want us to see and they don't want us to document. So today we are here to say enough is enough. Yesterday, with the support of our attorneys, we filed our lawsuit, and today we will go into the police commission. We will let them know that they and their officers must be held accountable for illegal actions. We are here to say that collusion and malicious prosecution by LAPD Lieutenant Shannon Paulson, Estela Lopez, and the city attorney will not be accepted and cannot be tolerated by us or anyone else in Los Angeles that might be targeted next. The voices of low-income people will not be silenced. Those who criticize LAPD or engage in other lawful protests must be protected in a democracy. Through all of the attempts to criminalize us and silence us, LA Can stands here together, unified and strong this morning. We will continue to organize, continue to protest when needed, and we are hopeful the federal courts will uphold our constitutional rights and direct the city and LAPD to change their tactics, since all of our efforts at engaging with city officials to date to stop this harassment have failed. And I want to introduce to you Deborah Burton.
Yeah. Good morning. I am Deborah Burton, a Skid Row resident and a community organizer with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. For the last 9 years, I have been working with LA Can to improve low-income communities. Here in my home community of downtown LA, I have worked adamantly to oppose the forceful displacement of black and brown low-income people. LAPD and the business community has promoted the gentrification of downtown LA. For this and other reasons, LA Can began protesting the Central City East Association Public Safety Walk. That walk was not about safety for myself or my homeless and poor neighbors of Skid Row. So I helped organize the protest and spoke on behalf of my community at them. Solely for this reason, I was falsely accused of several charges of assault and spent almost a year in the criminal justice system proving my innocence. This is an extraordinary, stressful, and frightening thing to go through, just for speaking out on behalf of my community. Community organizing and public protests are not crimes, though LAPD and the city attorneys try to make them crimes in my case. They prosecuted me for just speaking out on behalf of my community, and they targeted me for being a part of LA Can. This is not a crime to care about and defend our community. LAPD CCEA Lieutenant Shannon Paulson, Estela Lopez must be held accountable for their lives and the impact on our freedom and our lives. I believe community organizing creates change, and I am committed to organizing and fighting for our rights to organize for the rest of my life. I am proud to be here this morning, fighting for our rights to organize, fighting for our human rights in Los Angeles and beyond, and demanding accountability from the City of Los Angeles and the Downtown Business Association, CCEA.
My name is Dan Stormer. I'm one of the attorneys representing the plaintiffs, Deborah Burton and L.A. Can. With me are many of the other attorneys, all of whom will be available to answer any questions and to respond to any other inquiries that you might have concerning the case which we filed yesterday. You were given a press packet as you came in here. This press packet contains some of the most significant evidence I have ever seen in many, many years of being a civil rights lawyer. In it is unassailable documentation of the egregious violations of the First Amendment that have been engaged in by the LAPD, by the CCEA, and by certain other individuals. In that packet you have pictures. Those pictures were taken from a video of a roll call. In that roll call, one of the defendants in this action, Lieutenant Shannon Paulson, is giving out pictures of members of LA Can in order to focus upon them in upcoming demonstrations and upcoming participation with LA Can. They are specifically given certain individuals, Deborah Burton, Becky Dennison, and certain others. That is only one of many, many of the egregious violations that were planned and carried out. Also in this packet is a series of emails. Now this series of emails is absolutely contemptible in its violations of the First Amendment. In it, this is after a demonstration has already taken place. In it, Lieutenant Paulson, dealing with private citizens, conspires to create criminal violations against Deborah Burton. She conspires not just to go against Deborah Burton, but to use Deborah Burton as an example and as a method for silencing LA Can. In it, she says things like, while talking with a private citizen, mind you, a private citizen, and they are conspiring to create violations against LA Can, she says, what I might even do is take a crime report for the last 3 incidents. Not sure who to make the victims as of yet. She didn't even have people who were complaining. She didn't have victims. She says things like, I would like to do this a certain way, but I can't. And that prevents me from, it says, unfortunately, because of this conversation where she was told she might be violating the First Amendment and she wanted to proceed that way, she's told she can't. She said, unfortunately, because that conversation took place already, I can't do the old, I used my best professional judgment. She is creating a violation of the First Amendment. They go on to continue to harass and intimidate LA Can. They go on to, in a multiple of manners, violate the civil rights of both the organization, the members of the organization, and prosecute criminally Deborah Burton, as well as file charges which they then dismiss against many others. We have brought this lawsuit to put a halt to this despicable conduct by the LAPD, by the CCEA, and by certain other individuals. We've brought this lawsuit to redress the harm and the damages caused to Deborah Burton by their despicable conduct. We will not let this go unaddressed. We will take it to court, and we will see that the Constitution is protected. If you have any questions, we can either answer them now, or we can separately answer any questions that you might have. Any questions? Well, thank you. You have a question.